Without saying she was pregnant, Bella Dickens, an inconsequential young woman, abandoned her husband to travel the world with another man. 3 years later, she returned and appeared at his door with a little boy in her arms. Jeff had been living by himself for 3 years. His ex-wife Bella said she loved him very much, but one day, she simply said she was bored with her life with him and wanted new experiences, to meet new people and to be a different woman. Jeff didn't understand what she was talking about. She had never complained about their lives together. He begged Bella to stay and rethink things, but she was decided. And that was how the woman left, leaving Jeff sad and confused. There were no tears or hysteria, just a clean cut in the relationship. The divorce was also quick and easy, as they had no children or property in their names. But Jeff became depressed the months after she left. He had lost the person he had fallen in love with at first sight. They had met at a university sporting event. Jeff and Bella played tennis but had never met. It was on the court when Jeff played in the final of the university's tennis championship that Bella noticed the young man. Jeff had also been watching her since early in the event. With his shiny trophy in hand, Jeff went to his favorite bar to celebrate with friends. At the bar, their eyes met and Jeff approached Bella. She smiled and they were soon flirting with each other. Over time, sports became less important to both of them, but they rarely left each other's side. They were utterly in love. Even though he knew it was early, he proposed a month later. He made it clear he wanted to have a family with her. Bella stuttered at first, appearing insecure, but eventually said yes. When they married, the young woman was full of life. At the altar, Jeff whispered, "Our family begins here." Bella just smiled in silence. Jeff had lost interest in social events since she had left home, even when his old friends insisted he go out. With time, the pain from the separation diminished, and slowly Jeff began to feel more comfortable going out on his own. But now, 3 years later, when Jeff had finally moved on with his life, Bella appeared again at his door, only she wasn't alone. Looking down, he saw she had a little boy in her arms. What did this mean? Was it a joke in terribly bad taste? She left him and now comes back with a kid? These were a few of the questions rolling around his head after seeing the scene before him. When Bella entered the apartment that one day had been theirs, she placed the little baby on the bed and went to get a bag out of her car. Jeff just observed it all, not knowing how to react. He walked over to the little boy, who was also confused about where he was and who this man was. Bella reappeared carrying her things, occupying the space as if she lived there. She looked at her child, who was beginning to cry, and smiled at him, saying not to worry. They were safe now. Jeff began his questioning again. What does this all mean? Who is he? What are you doing here? Bella dropped her bags and looked at Jeff. This is yours. Your son. I'm sorry I left so abruptly and then showed up again like this. We have nowhere to go and I can't raise him on the street. So I thought maybe you could put us up for a little while. What do you think? I promise we will leave when I find someplace else, she replied. Jeff looked at his ex, unable to form a response. It was as if a black hole had sucked up all his thoughts. He had to be able to say something, but he felt a mix of confusion, sadness, and anger. He had always wanted to be a father. He had dreamed of this moment for years, but in none of those dreams did he meet his son this way. He wanted to look at the baby and be happy, but he just wondered how Bella dared to hide this from him for so long. Meanwhile, the woman continued talking while he unpacked her bags, acting as if the plates were still hers. I was working in the marketing department when we got married. I always loved you, but one day, I fell in love with the young guy who worked there. He was great, different than you. He was more adventurous and exciting. He wanted to hit the road, travel the world, and be free, you know? That's when I realized that I also wanted to be like that. So, we started dating, and I couldn't avoid falling in love with him like a teenager. After that, I couldn't think of anything else, she said. Jeff sat down to listen to her story. He suspected she had left him for another man, but was never sure. At the time, he had to get on with his life and forget about Bella as quickly as possible. That's why he never sought out information about his ex-wife. As soon as Bella had walked out the door, she went on the road with a coworker, a man named Barry. They lived in love on the road for 2 months as if there were no tomorrow. They went to exotic locations, ate in cheap restaurants, and watched the sun rise from their camping tent. Bella felt alive again. She had forgotten it was possible to be in someone's life without giving up on knowing the world. Barry always wanted to be free and said he would take her everywhere, until one day she felt sick. She suspected she could be pregnant and took a test in the bathroom stall of an Italian restaurant. She didn't know what to think when she saw the positive results. Even worse, the test said she was already 2 months into the pregnancy, meaning the baby was Jeff's. Barry was shocked to hear she was pregnant and was relieved when she said Jeff was the father. He did what he could do to accept the situation and rented a cheap apartment for them. But he knew that a baby would put the lifestyle he had chosen many years ago at risk. Time passed and there was no way to keep the baby from crying. And every time little David opened his mouth, Barry would become furious and look at Bella with eyes like lasers. The baby was growing up and had no physical traits similar to Barry, a constant reminder that he was not responsible for the boy. The man put up with the situation for 3 years, until one night, while Bella and her son slept, he threw some things into his backpack, grabbed his passport, and quietly walked out the door to never return again. Unable to pay the rent alone, I needed to leave the apartment. I'm sorry for how I treated you when I left, but please, don't put us out on the street now, Bella pleaded to her ex-husband. In a few days, I'll find a place, but I need somewhere safe for David to stay. But that little boy's presence was destabilizing Jeff's life. If Bella had shown up at the door alone, he would definitely not have been so passive. Instead, he would have slammed the door in her face. But she was with a little miracle. David, his son, was right there under his roof. An innocent little boy who shouldn't pay the price for his mother's irresponsibility. Deep down, Jeff wanted to kick her out and care for David alone, but he knew the boy would suffer if he did. So, he agreed to take them both in. He was going on vacation soon and could get closer to his son while his ex looked for a place to live. He had always dreamed of being a father and got along well with David, so it made him wonder how Bella's boyfriend could have run out on such a little miracle. The man grew increasingly attached to the boy each day, not knowing that his life would be turned upside down soon. Jeff was uncomfortable with his ex-wife in the apartment, but also dreaded the day she would leave and take the boy away. One afternoon, while David was taking a nap, his father called a lawyer to see if getting custody of the child would be possible, but the lawyer said it was a lost cause. First, he would need a DNA test proving he was the father, but even after establishing paternity, most judges preferred mothers in custody cases. He had already stolen 3 years of relationship with his child, and now Jeff didn't want to lose another minute. A few days later, Bella returned home irritated, complaining that no decent places were within her budget. She said a friend had begun a job as the director of a marketing agency in Texas and wanted Bella to work on her team, but she had to say no because it involved a lot of travel, and she couldn't leave David alone. I can't believe this kid is going to make me miss this golden opportunity, complained Bella. Jeff's eyes widened as he never thought he would hear his ex-wife say something so revolting. Despite his disgust, Jeff didn't say anything in front of the boy. Instead, he argued that David should stay with him so she could take this job. Bella said no, but then commented that this might be a solution. The fact was that Jeff's vacation would end soon, and he had already been thinking of ways to stay close to his son. Recently, he asked his boss if he could work from home. His boss agreed as long as he completed all his tasks on time. Jeff was pleased. He wouldn't have to divide his attention between the boy and his computer screen, but at least he wouldn't leave his boy at the mercy of his mother's bad decisions. Jeff dedicated all his free time to the boy in the final days of vacation. They walked through forests and parks and played in the grass until their clothes were filthy. They went to the beach, and David was enchanted by seeing the sea for the first time. In these moments, the possibility of being separated from his son disappeared from his thoughts. It seemed like everything was going to work out. He didn't count on the outrageous behavior of his ex-wife messing things up again. It was a Friday afternoon, and Jeff had finished his errands. He watched cartoons with David in the apartment while waiting for Bella to come home. She was already an hour late when Jeff's phone rang. It was Bella. Her voice was dry and rough, saying he needed to understand and forgive her again, as she would not return home. She was going to start a new life, be a different woman, like she had tried to be with Barry. But first, she had to get something off her chest, and conscious that she had been holding on to until then. Jeff was confused by all this and asked her to just say what it was. She drew silent for a moment and then said, slurring her words, "Forgive me, Jeff, but he's not yours. You are not David's father." Jeff's breathing stopped and he became pale. Barry would have left me on the spot if I had told him the truth. The last thing he wanted was kids. But since I said the kid was yours, he put up with us for a few years. Jeff simply couldn't find any words. Understand, I can't stay stuck in a relationship. I need more than this in my life, she said. Then, Bella begged forgiveness. She said she would renew her life and had complete confidence in her ex-husband caring for her son. And she added, if Jeff wanted to get rid of the kid, he had her permission to give him to an orphanage. She hung up without saying goodbye, where she was going, or with whom. Jeff would have been furious with the news and how Bella had lied to him, but he could only feel a profound sadness for the boy. It was difficult to understand such an irresponsible and inhumane attitude. It wasn't enough that she had abandoned Jeff in the past. Now, David's mother left her only son to an unknown fate. Jeff was disgusted and cried while embracing his boy. He waited a few minutes to calm down and called the police. The following day, 2 police officers and a social worker went to Jeff's apartment and took him and his son to the police station. There, he told the whole story while they listened, horrified. "How could someone do such a thing? I cared for the boy as if he were my own child," said Jeff. "But now, I'm worried he might return to his biological father. But by what my ex said, he has no interest in being a father. Go home and rest. You can leave the rest to us. The child has a father, and the mother should be held responsible for abandoning her child," replied an officer. Jeff returned to the apartment broken. It was a sad and absurd situation, and he missed being near David. He ran into the boy's clothes and toys whenever he went in the apartment. On the refrigerator was a drawing David had made. With stiff, firm strokes, he had drawn himself and a man who he said was Jeff. He realized it would be challenging to stay here, even more difficult than when his wife left him years ago. The days dragged on. Jeff had begun working at home to stay with David, but now he was alone in the apartment all day. The silence was strange, so he contacted one of the police officers, Bart Austin. Over the phone, the officer informed him David had ended up in an orphanage and Bella had been found. She would be prosecuted for abandonment, but she seemed like a tormented woman determined not to live as a mother. As for the father, he was found in Asia, but had fallen from a waterfall and was in grave condition in the hospital for a few weeks, but unfortunately did not make it. Therefore, the boy ended up in an orphanage. "Which orphanage is he in? Do you know?" asked Jeff. "I don't know, but I can find out if you like," responded the officer. The following day, after getting the address, Jeff went to the orphanage and talked with the director about how he could adopt the boy. The director explained that it was a long process requiring several documents. In addition, the child had a mother, just she didn't want David at the moment. Therefore, Jeff could obtain legal guardianship of the boy, not full custody. Jeff insisted that he wanted to try, that his priority was to find a dignified home for him that was close to someone who loved him. To remove any doubts, Jeff took a DNA test that showed he was not David's biological father. But when he saw David on the porch of the orphanage with his head down, it broke his heart. He was only an acquaintance of the boys with no blood relationship, and more, was a single man living alone. Everything seemed to be against getting legal guardianship, but it was worth trying. He had a special bond with David. No one could break that now. Jeff collected the required documents and asked for letters of recommendations from friends and his bosses at work. Now, all he could do was wait for the court's decision. Finally, almost a month later, it came. When the phone rang, Jeff dropped everything and ran to the phone. His legal guardianship had been approved. Jeff waited for nothing and went straight to the orphanage to pick up David. Besides the director, Officer Austin was there to give the boy to Jeff. In my 20 years as a cop, I've never seen a person so dedicated to a child, even not being related by blood. Bart said, "I hope you have a happy future together." Jeff took David home to the apartment, and once again, the boy filled the home with joy, colors, and laughter. While David played in the living room, Jeff began to make new plans for the future. This was the ultimate experience. He had never felt so complete in all his life. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like. The other video appearing on the screen now will also move you. So have a good session, and see you in the next video.